Peter, welcome to the show, man. How you doing today?
Very well, thanks, Drew. Thanks for having me on.
Excited to have you on, man. I know I promised to get you on a while ago, and
Yes.
Now we're just doing it, right?
Yeah. It's been a lot of communication and back and forth. It's about time.
Yeah, and it's not like you haven't been busy, doing nothing, right?
No.
And it's not like I haven't been busy either, so.
Yeah, we're not just sitting around waiting to talk to each other, right?
Exactly. So we first met at PaleoFX last year, not this past year, but the year before, right?
Right.
And man, I really liked your story, what you do in the community, but I kind of want to introduce you to my audience first. So let me allow you to introduce yourself to my audience, if that's okay.
Yeah, so I'll give you a little bit of backstory, if that's okay. Yeah,
100%, man.
Yeah, perfect. So, I started off in the fitness community, and for what it is, for better or for worse, in one of the big box gyms, right? And I was a fitness manager in a very large gym. And so, I went through about 4 years of this experience, which was, like I said, for better or for worse. To me, I wouldn't have traded it for the world at this point, because the amount of learning I went through at the time was just unbelievable. And of course, you have to kind of, definitely see a lot of mistakes and errors happening before you can understand that, there's ways to fix it and maybe better methods that you can go about doing things. So, I started off in a big box gym, sort of saw a lot of these mistakes that were happening, and saw really what it was I was in a unique position where I had about 20 trainers working for me, and each one of them with between maybe 15 to 20 clients. And it's just a massive amount of data that was in front of me that I could kind of analyze and sort of understand. And what really was, I think, the driving force behind this sort of curiosity was my sort of subjective observation that people weren't seeing good results in the gym. Like, you'd see people come in, and maybe they'd start working with a trainer, and maybe for the first couple of months they'd lose some weight. Yep. But especially the people who had a bigger weight loss goal, it would happen for potentially up to 6 months. Maybe if they were lucky, they'd be losing weight up to 6 months and then it would be a plateau, and then it would be almost going the opposite way. And what was bizarre to me about it was that I saw these people going through this experience in the gym. And as a fitness manager, I was in my office and I was observing the entire floor the entire time. I knew every one of those people. And I would see them in there on the cardio 3 days a week for 60 to 90 minutes with that thing on full tilt, sometimes with a weight vest on. And they'd come into their trainer and they would give them a list of calories that they were eating, right? Yeah. And the food that they were eating. And yet they hadn't lost a pound. And so it was like, well, if you do the math on this is physically impossible. What you're suggesting to me, if we follow the paradigm of calories in, calories out, this is physically impossible. I've seen them burn more calories than they're representing on this sheet just in the time they've been in the gym this week, let alone anything else they've done.
Yeah.
So then, a lot of times I think as trainers we're told, well, the customer or the client's not necessarily telling you the truth about the calories they're not writing it down. And it's like, sure, that could be true for a small percentage of people, and that could be a small part of it, but you can't convince me that these people who are killing themselves in the gym are going home and eating a bunch of junk food and saying, oh, nobody will ever know, look how sneaky I'm being.
Yeah.
It doesn't fit the psychology. So there was this thing where I was like, definitely we're missing something. Like, what is it? And like I said, I had this data in front of me and I could see, and I would talk to my trainers every month, and we'd have a meeting every month and really talk about every single client. So I really had an understanding, and we go over the data, and so we really got to the understanding, or my understanding was the calories in, calories out paradigm. Let's put it to you this way. I'm not suggesting for a moment that that doesn't have a role in weight loss.
Yeah.
And I think that we'd be foolish if we were pretending that it doesn't. Of course it does. But if we're going to suggest that somebody is overweight simply because they're consuming more calories than they're putting into their body, and that's also how you solve the problem, we're always going to end up with a sick population with chronic disease, which is what we have right now. You know, so that's kind of where I came from. I I learned about kettlebell training.
Yeah. Tell me about that transition, because that's
So
what you're known for.
this was about 3 years into my training with as a fitness manager, and I'd been in the industry for about 3 years. And definitely what I was noticing was in my own personal workouts and in the workouts I like to provide for people, I definitely like to do things that are more movement based as opposed to sort of like joint movement, one isolated muscle drill, right?
Yeah.
So I wasn't doing the isolation. And I personally enjoyed that. And I think a part of that was because I had been a martial artist for most of my life. So a lot of the movements that I was seeing in the gym, they kind of related to martial arts. Martial arts also provided me with a lot of flexibility and also sort of neuromuscular control and coordination that made it so that those functional style movements were sort of easier for me to do, I think, than for most people, especially with the flexibility end of it. So I really enjoyed it. But then I also saw that applying that as opposed to the muscle isolation style and the cardiovascular for an hour or 90 minutes on some hamster type of treadmill machine, but I found that that was just something that was much better. But I hadn't found kettlebells. I was using, more basic equipment at the time.
Yeah.
So when I finally found kettlebells, it was, at a point where there was very little real knowledge about kettlebells at the time. And what's funny is, we think now about some of these, people who really influenced us, and it's wonderful that we had that influence back in the day. But if you really look at the early teachings from some of these supposed kettlebell masters, and it's a disaster, so there was a lot of sort of like, we were all in a phase where we were all learning for ourselves for a good 5-year stretch, going back 10, 15 years ago, because, even the supposed masters were definitely changing their techniques and learning and saying different things as we went. So it was definitely a long haul, and you had to apply a lot of the experience that you have from your other methodologies of training and things like that.
Yeah.
But really what it is about the kettlebell, to be specific, is that this is not a magical tool. There's nothing magical about it, and I don't have a specific affinity for it other than the fact that it's extremely versatile. Yeah. So there's a lot of things that, there's a lot of other tools that you can use that mimic kettlebells, that do things that kettlebells can't do. And vice versa. There's, so it's definitely not the end all be all, but it is an extremely versatile tool. And so if you're saying to somebody, hey, let's have a minimal investment, let's have a small amount of room as possible taken up in your house in which you'll have to store your workout equipment. And if you want to have something that's going to last forever off of one single investment, then that's probably the best choice to make for most people because of its versatility.
Yeah.
Now, I'd probably also recommend a few other pieces of equipment once you get a few kettlebells too, but that's kind of perspective on it.
Yeah. So we'll get into that a little bit later. But what I wanted to go back to was what you were talking about initially. What did you learn as a manager, seeing this whole calories in, calories out paradigm, people not losing weight, people, the coaches, the trainers trying to keep everyone accountable? What did you learn from that as far as kind of like the mental and emotional side of weight loss that was affecting these people?
Yeah, because here's what happens, right? Especially if you're in a gym, so you think about the environment, and you've got one of two people in there. You've got peers like yourself who are in there trying to lose weight, the amateur, the people who are struggling with misinformation, right? And then you've got who else? You've got people that look like yourself, right? So that's a pretty intimidating place.
Yeah.
And the trainers, they look like yourself and myself. And so you've got a bunch of people like that. And then you've got these people who are being told something. They're busting their hump for it. and after a year, they still look almost the same as they did. At least to them in the mirror, they look the same as they did when they walked in. So what does that do to their mentality? I mean, what you're pointing out is such a valuable thing, because how would that impact anybody to put in that much effort? And if somebody told you that, no, it's actually that when you eat a particular food, it impacts your body in a way that it doesn't impact their body.
Yeah.
Now, it's bad for everybody. It just doesn't make that person swell up.
Yeah.
But it does make you swell up. That's really why you have the issue. It's got nothing to do with the effort that you're putting out, and it's got nothing to do with your dedication or anything like that. It's got to do with the fact that your body, in fact, in a way, I think that we can almost look at it as something where if your body tells you early that the foods that you're putting into it are not appropriate, then you can respond to that early. If you're the type of person who can eat McDonald's and junk food all day and still be ripped, I feel sorry for you in a way, because you do that for the rest of your life and you'll die at 50 or 60 anyway. But you just won't know it because you'll think that you're healthy. So it's almost good to have your body respond with some kind of signal to say, what you're doing to me isn't right. And that's not that food. And again, it just comes down to the types of foods you're eating. And so one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, Drew, was from a perspective. And one of the things I really appreciated about you and what we talked about was, like, you come to a paleo conference, you're talking about ketogenic lifestyle, you're pushing this ketogenic, the concept and the information on people so that they can be informed about it. And the reason that this is so important from my perspective is because the misinformation about weight loss regarding diet has greatly impacted the way that people exercise.
Let's talk about that.
So we have people thinking that if they are overweight, instead of changing the foods that they're eating and adopting a diet of ketogenic and removing specific foods from their diet, they think that they can go spin those calories away on a particular machine, right? So they're impacting their workout based upon this concept of weight loss. But the weight loss isn't happening in the gym. The weight loss, 85% of it happens in the kitchen. And you can complement your weight loss in the gym, there's no question. But because the amount of weight loss that's actually occurring in the gym is so relatively minimal, don't let that be a driving force behind the decisions you're making with the exercises you're doing. I can lose weight by doing deadlifts, so why would I run on a treadmill for an hour, pounding away on my joints? And I can burn just as many calories, or I can lose just as much weight doing functional exercises as I could that would deteriorate my body. So people are making decisions about their exercises based upon a weight loss goal.
I think that's the problem with the health and fitness industry, is our perception of what health and fitness is supposed to be or supposed to look like, because they see infomercials, they see Instagram models, celebrities, in their perfect bodies, and they think that's what healthy is supposed to look like, and so I need to look like that in order to be healthy, when they don't realize that the goal really isn't weight loss. Weight loss shouldn't be the goal. That's just your relationship with gravity. Body composition, fat loss is what people are really looking for, but they put so much value on their weight, which it is not black and white. There's a lot of variables that go into weight loss: hormones, sleep, stress management. It's not just calories in and calories out like you're talking about. So that's what I'm trying to do, and you as well, is trying to change people's perception of what health and fitness is supposed to be. It doesn't have to be this hardcore grind where you diet down really low calories and you kill yourself in the gym for hours and hours to look a certain way. There's a lot of people walking around with six packs and that are skinny, that are dying on the inside, but people don't know that because they think, oh man, you look good, so who cares what you eat? And like you said, like, this is stuff that sneaks up on people over time. It would be cool if you drank soda and your kidneys instantly hurt, right? Like your body told you right away, hey, don't do this. But it's slow and steady, and before you know it, you're like, boom, you have type 2 diabetes. Like, man, I feel like I'm okay. Like, I don't feel like I'm going to die. That's what's scary about this. It's just an uphill battle, I think, with changing people's perception of, like, you don't need to do cardio for 60 minutes, you don't need to lift weights for 60 minutes either. And so that's what I want to get into with you is, let's talk about kettlebell training, functional training, what that looks like for optimal fat loss and for, just your average person trying to be healthier. So from my opinion, I think it's about working out smarter, not necessarily longer.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. Well, definitely, I feel like the average duration of people's workouts is extreme, but then, sometimes that's also social hour and other things involved in gym time. So, but yeah, definitely. I mean, you should probably, for most people, 30 minutes is fine. And it kind of depends upon, I think there's a lot of preference involved there. And I'm definitely one of those people who, is all for a prolonged warm-up period, because no matter how long you think your warm-up should be, there's a good likelihood you should extend it by, a good 10 to 15%.
Yeah.
Because, especially, I'm 42, so I start to get to this point where it's like, okay, I'm going to make sure that I don't move too quickly and that I take my time. And then, of course, you can avoid injuries and stay in the gym. So that kind of changes for everybody. But as far as the type of training and the modality, training smarter is the most important thing, as you said. And I think that what I break it down to for most people is this. And when I train my clients, I break it down into something that I learned from one of my greatest mentors, and I'm going to mention his name is Paul Chek. Who you probably
Paul Chek. Yep, definitely.
So he's the person that coined the 7 primal movements. And so let's talk about what these are. We've got the first primal movement is a hip hinge. Okay, and this is what you would do if you were bending down to pick anything up off the ground that was heavy. So in the real world, this is an extremely functional movement. If you're even picking up your bag of groceries, take them from your car to your house, you put them down in front of your door, you unlock your keys, you pick the groceries back up. That's a hip hinge movement. Okay. And that's the first thing that people should learn. Okay. The squat movement is the next movement. And when I say this is very interesting, because a lot of times when you say a bend / hip hinge, and then that's the first one. The second one is a squat. A lot of people say, what's the difference between the two, right? What's the difference between a hip hinge and a squat? Yeah. Right? A lot of people don't know the difference between a hip hinge and a squat. Yeah. And really, if you break it down, if you ask the average person to perform both a hip hinge and a squat, they'll be able to do one but not the other. Generally speaking, you're going to see people are way too tight or out of alignment or whatever to be able to perform both. So hip hinge, squat, and lunge, that's the third primal movement. Okay. Hip hinge, squat, lunge. Then you move into thoracic rotation, right, which divides the body from lower half and upper half. And there's that rotation that happens in the upper from lower. So thoracic spine, that rotation is the third movement. The fifth movement is pushing. Sixth movement is pulling. It doesn't really have to be in this order. Yeah. And then the seventh movement is gait. So the most important thing is this, and I'll go through those again. Bend, squat, lunge, twist, push, pull, gait.
Gotcha. 7. Okay. Yep.
So what you do is this, is if you're new to the gym, you're new to the workout scene, or you're just new to this style of training, right? You've been on the hamster wheel for years and it hasn't worked for you. The first thing you do is you learn those 7 primal movements with just body weight. In fact, just take down to the first 6, because walking and everything, we'll get to that later, but let's take down the first 6. You learn those with just body weight. So you learn how to hip hinge, you learn how to squat, you learn how to lunge, you do all of those things in the most simple way possible. And my advice to you at this point would be to get somebody to analyze your posture. I think if you don't, there's another way you can go. You can analyze your own posture. Yeah. But if you're choosing to analyze your own posture, you better be pretty confident in what you're seeing and what you think you should be seeing. So you really have to have some good information to be able to self-analyze at this level of your training. Okay. So go through those movements body weighted, and then maybe a few variations of those movements body weighted, which they do have. For example, lunging, you can lunge backwards, you can lunge forward, you can lunge sideways. Push-ups, there's many variations of pushing exercises you can do. So learn very basic versions of those. Then what you do is you learn to do those exercises with resistance. So you take the hip hinge movement, and instead of doing it with just body weight, you turn it into a deadlift. You do a squat with a little bit of weight held in front of your chest right here, and just do a little goblet squat with that. You turn a press now into something with a soda can, even just something to press overhead to give you the idea of weight, so on and so forth. You move into slow resistance training from there. Once you have developed, and when we talk about proficiency, I mean, you should be so good at a deadlift that not to the point where you get it right, but to the point where you can't get it wrong. Right? That's when you've got it down. That's when you progress. You can't get it wrong. Then you progress from the strength phase into the power phase. So that talks about things like the kettlebell swing and the kettlebell clean and snatch. So before you even get to those primary moves, you've gone through a good 2 levels of sort of training to get to those power phase moves with the kettlebell. And with whatever it is you're doing. And then at the same time, as you're sort of as you're going into the power phase, or as you're going, let's say, into the strength phase with your resistance. So on the second level, you can start moving into the power phase with body weight. Right? So you could start doing jump squats. You could start doing power lunges. You can start doing things with body weight to get the power phase activated before you get into the resistance level, which would be about the third level, so to speak, of your training.
Yeah.
And then once you start incorporating the power phase with resistance, really what you'll start to almost have to incorporate at the same time. And this is actually where your training, to me, this is where it becomes awesome. This is where it becomes infinite, is you start combining the movements. Yeah. So let me point this out. So if you think about a squat unto itself, that's a specific movement. Well, squats work very well with, let's say, an overhead press. And that's an exercise called a thruster.
Yeah.
So those 7 primal movements, the lunge happens to work really well with rotational movements. If you've ever seen anybody throw a ball, it's a lunge and a twist in the thoracic spine followed by a press.
Yep.
Right? If you ever seen anybody do a tug of war, it's a lunge backwards with a thoracic twist and a pull.
Yep.
Right? So it's a combination of those 3 movements every time you do something very simple, and that's with resistance. Of course, throwing a ball is very little resistance, but you get the idea.
Yep.
In the same way that squatting works well with pressing, lunging works well with rotating, you'll also find that the hip hinge works very well with upper body pulling exercises.
Yeah.
So that's where exercises like a clean or a snatch come in, where you're using a hip hinge, but you're actually also using upper body strength to pull the weight upwards and to control the arc of the weight and the way that the weight moves.
Yeah.
So these exercises, they complement each other, but then what we also find is that you start adding in proprioceptive challenges. Like maybe you do something now on one leg, or you do something in a way that you're stepping up onto a step, or something on an environment that's less stable. And what you do is you enter this realm of the infinite almost. Like, because the real world, the challenges that you'll face are infinite, like chaotic, that you can't really even label them. You get to that point in your training in the gym when you start to get to that level where you're combining exercises, you're changing the environment, you're making it proprioceptively challenged and things like that.
So it sounds like, I agree with all these movements that you're talking about, especially for functional fitness. It sounds like, things like CrossFit, for example, kind of combine all of these together in different formats where you're doing those 7 movements maybe together, sometimes separately. And that's kind of like a one-size-fits-all approach to what you're saying. Especially if you want to constantly randomize your workouts, right? Is that a good recommendation for someone, or can someone just come up with these ideas themselves to kind of continue to progress?
Yeah. So
what do you think about what do you think about CrossFit as far as combining all these things together?
I think that CrossFit. It's a really tough question because you're putting me in a position, Drew.
I need to know now. Which side are you on? Just kidding.
No, I'm not on either side.
Yeah.
Because here's how I see CrossFit. I see CrossFit like chiropractors.
Yep.
and even like doctors. You're going to walk into some places and they're going to treat you really well and they're going to provide you things in a service that's going to make you really healthy. And other places of the same concept and the same teaching are going to be a disaster.
Yeah.
And I think that is definitely the case.
Gotcha.
So do I think that, unto itself it is either safe or unsafe? No, I do not believe that. I think that there have been in the past a lot of people who got into CrossFit before they were physically ready, and that wasn't recognized by the coaches. And as a result, there was a lot of injuries. And personally, being in the fitness industry, I was witness to a lot of people who experienced that. So, but again, there's a lot of things to it, and I think that there's a lot of accountability to be had for everybody to do that. Yeah. So no, I don't necessarily recommend CrossFit, but I don't not recommend it either. But you are correct in saying that they do take those exercises and randomize them. Yeah. Really what it comes down to for me, Drew, when it comes to your health on all levels. So you talk about diet especially, but when it comes to your exercise, the more you can analyze your body and the more you can respond to the signals that your body is giving you, the more appropriate your response to those signals is, the healthier you will be. Yeah. Right. So if you go into a CrossFit gym and they're telling you to do something and your body is saying, go, go, go all the way, this feels fantastic, and then you walk out and you're pumped and everything's great, and you are responding to those signals, then CrossFit or any type of training modality can be a really positive thing in that way.
Where,
you know,
yeah, sorry to switch gears here. Where are you at with nutrition over the years? You've gone from endurance, cyclist to bodybuilding to personal training management to kind of functional fitness with kettlebells. Where has your nutrition taken you? Like, where are you at today, and where has it evolved from?
So I would almost say that my path through ancestral health began with nutrition, not with movement.
Gotcha.
So I was studying Weston Price and actually through Paul Chek back, 15, 16 years ago. And then that kind of pulled me into the movement concept of ancestral health. So it's been a slow progress. I mean, when I first started reading take grain out of your diet and stuff like this was at a point where people were sucking down, all types of chemicals, and we're in a very commercial corporate environment too, which probably didn't help. So it wasn't something that I can tell you that I dedicated my entire, existence to doing the paleo lifestyle until, it didn't happen for me until probably I'd say about 8 years ago was the first time I actually went full paleo.
Okay.
And I'd say that's pretty much where I am today. In fact, I it's been at least 4 months since I had any sugar and grain. It's been years since I had grain. However, right now I'm sort of on more of a ketosis style. So which is something I'll have to talk to you more about a little bit off. We have more time, because I'd be interested to hear your take more on sort of a.
So it sounds like a low carb paleo approach, which I think a lot of people are kind of, gravitating towards, because I think a lot of people do feel not a lot of people, some people feel good on a low carb diet, whether that's paleo or keto or just high fat, low carb approach, because we've been ingrained with this methodology of like, hey, you got to have 7 to 11 servings of grains per day, and you got to stay low fat, and we've been doing that for years and decades, and now look where it's gotten us. And I think a lot of people are just starting to realize that, okay, there are other options out there, but the hard part is that you're going against people who have been so ingrained in this mentality that they're like, well, that's not sustainable. That's not normal. Like, that's weird. You're cutting out like necessary food groups. And so it's really hard for people to let go of those things that they've grown up on, cereal for breakfast, sandwiches for lunch, pasta for dinner with, chips, cookies, and crackers in between. That was our society for years and years. So have you noticed a difference, from the 8 years of doing paleo to doing kind of a low-carb paleo approach? What have you noticed? What do you like? Where are you at now?
Yeah, so one thing I want to point out is that one of the first things that you said was it works for some people, not everybody. And it's so true, because my body type needs it. My body type almost needs that really low carbohydrate. And I would tell you this, Drew, that I would have told you that even throughout my entire career as a fitness professional, I would always have said I was a bigger guy. I'm just a bigger guy. That's just the way that it is. And I'm 42 years old, and I've got a lower body fat percentage now than I had when I was 25. Killing it in the gym. 3 times more hours spent on the gym floor than I'm spending now working out by easily. And it's simply by completely removing certain things from my diet, and then including things that I didn't used to eat very much of either, and learning how to I do a lot of cooking, and I think that that's actually a skill for people's health that you just have to pick up. Either you have to cook, or you have to have somebody that you love that loves you very much that will cook for you. But I do truly believe in the home cooked meal, and I'm as far as my personal health, I can make that. I think that that's the most important thing. But I've definitely seen some in my own life. It's made a massive difference. And one thing that I tell people is, because it doesn't work for everybody, but yet the same overarching concept, I think, needs to be considered regardless. You need to work for your own body type. And while your body type might be okay with carbs, your body type is not. Nobody's body is used to eating foods that have only been around for 50 years. So if your choice is to put carbohydrates into to your body, you have to be very, very careful about what those foods are. So maybe you're not going to have a direct issue with it, as we've already talked about. But if you're eating carbohydrates, I still think that you need to take a Paleolithic approach to that nutritional profile.
Yeah.
And I think that's extremely important. So one thing that I do tell people, and for your benefit, you might consider your crowd south of the equator, if you have a big following there right now, because summer is the time to consider to go slightly higher in the carbohydrates, and then winter, of course, being the time to go more into the ketogenic style, which would be more following with our ancestors. And really what it comes down to is a question of where your ancestors lived, did the ground freeze? If the ground froze where your ancestors lived, they didn't have the availability to eat fruits and vegetables all year round.
Yeah.
So, so you definitely, I'm definitely into eating seasonally, into moving seasonally, and into living according to the seasons.
Gotcha.
Summer being a time of production, and winter being the time of, or fall being the time of harvest and getting those rewards, winter rest, and then spring, of course, for preparation. I think that if we incorporate that, it's again, it kind of goes back into that.
And I like that too, because it mixes it up. It's not the same thing all year round, eating, chicken, broccoli, sweet potatoes, every single meal for, all year round. And you're always in a hypertrophy phase, or always in a cardio phase. Like, it's good to mix things up. Like, for me, I get sick of doing the same thing over and over again, to be honest with you. And that's why once or twice a year, I'll sign up for something that I suck at, that I know I'm not good at, because it forces me to train outside of my comfort zone. And like this last year, I did a triathlon. I'm like, I got to learn how to swim. I got to learn how to be on the bike for an hour and a half or so. Like, it's different. It's hard, but it pushes me to train differently. And then other times I get lazy, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go for a walk today. And I'm fine with it. I know it's not going to get me a six pack, but it relieves my stress levels. And, stress management and sleep, I think, are overlooked in our industry too much. We focus so much on exercise and diet only, where, we're missing a huge piece of the puzzle with managing our sleep, like sleeping like we're getting paid to do it, like it's your full-time job, like, and then also your stress management, man. Like, our lives these days here in a first world country are super busy, super stressful over the smallest things. Like, traffic was awful today, or the Wi-Fi was down at this place and I couldn't do this or that. Like, we're complaining about these things that didn't exist 100 years ago, but it causes stress. So I think those two things are overlooked.
I love both of these points, and I want to piggyback on each one of them.
Sure.
The first one being the sleep thing, because this was something that I always noticed, and it blew my mind. We'd have these people, and if you go into a big box gym, especially at 6, 7 o'clock at night, and you look at the cardio section of that gym, and you see, like, I used to call it the sea of bobbing heads. Do you know what I mean? On the elliptical or the treadmills, and you've got this cardio section. It's the sea of bobbing heads. And, the cortisol production from doing that type of exercise that late at night, I mean, it's extreme.
Yeah.
And of course, they're doing these types of exercises under this bright fluorescent light, and usually with some other type of audio visual input going on. And of course, we know that the weight loss and sleep are so intimately connected. I mean, you can't have one without the other. And of course, we send these people home at 8 o'clock at night with this ridiculous level of cortisol hormone production and under these lights and everything, and expect them to go to sleep and rest well and recover. And happen. And then you think about what you talked about is stress. And stress, what is interesting is your stress accumulates. It's not like work stress is over here, and then your physical stress is over here, and then your relationship stress is over here. And if you fill up this bucket, that doesn't affect this bucket. That's not the way it works. If you fill up your stress bucket with one type of stress, your stress bucket is full. And if you throw exercise on top of that stress bucket, you're now in a degradation. You're actually not benefiting. And a lot of people, I don't think they realize that. But when you have a massive amount of stress from many, many factors in your life, you can't just add more stress and expect to have a positive outcome.
Yeah.
And we're dealing with a lot of things right now, just in our lives. And I think that there's a lot of stress that we create for ourselves. So it's something that
Yeah, it's definitely something that needs to be looked at. Really quick before we go, I want you to talk about KettleBellMovement.com, a little bit about what people can expect from your brand or your website, and then we'll tell people where they can find you on social media and stuff.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So KettleBellMovement.com is we are a video educational site, so we teach through video. We have 6 levels that we follow through your education. So the first, we go through basically the levels that we've kind of discussed. The first level being just body weighted movements. The second one being very slow resistance movements using simple exercises, and then progressing all the way through the power phase and using other types of conditions to make the exercises harder and different techniques as we go through the level system. So 6 levels with about 200 lessons on video of various exercises. So everything from, of course, the hip hinge, body weighted, all the way through Turkish get-ups, two-handed kettlebell swings, all the way up to, let's see, I left off yesterday, actually, my final video that I was filming yesterday was one of my favorite, which is the bent press. And if you guys have never done the bent press, that's an exercise that is one of my very favorites, and you guys can check me out to find out why. So we've got about 200 lessons on video. And then we have about 125 workouts on video. So they're all between 15 and 50 minutes long.
Cool.
And they're searchable by strength, flexibility, or endurance. So depending upon what you want out of your workout, they're searchable by level.
Okay.
And also by the name of the workout, and also by duration. So if you really want to pick out the workout that's right for you for the day, you can do that, or you can follow through the daily workout that we send to you. So
cool. And where can people find you other than your website, social media?
So KettleBell Movement on Facebook. Yeah, and then we're KettleBell Moves on Twitter and Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're always around. If you guys have questions, especially on our Facebook page, if you guys are asking questions, we're always around on there to talk to you guys.
Okay. Well, Peter, thanks so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate what you do in this community and in this industry, and helping people change their perception of health and fitness, and hopefully we'll get there. So keep moving forward, man. So
thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Okay. We'll talk to you later, man. Have a good one.